Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's 12:30 on a Friday afternoon. We've had a couple of technical glitches here this afternoon with our Facebook and YouTube live broadcast, brought to you by People to People. So what we're going to do today is that we're going to give you an overview of the market conditions for jobs in across Australia over last week. We'll catch up with some of the job market current affairs. We'll do our regular numbers section where we'll update you on the latest stats released this week on jobs. Some interesting ones from the Internet Vacancy Index and some really quite remarkable numbers about women in the workforce and the unemployment related to women in the workforce from Indeed and the Australian Bureau of Statistics. So I'm looking forward to that. We'll also join Megan and Amy for an update on the legal market in Sydney and Melbourne. They'll be joining us from their respective cities. Ben Wheeler from our Brisbane office will also have the opportunity of the week, a finance role, so looking forward to hearing from Ben. And Kath Kennedy from our Sydney office will be giving our job hunting tip for this week. Finally, we'll give you some dates for the upcoming events that you may wish to catch. And if you've got any questions throughout the broadcast today, then please comment below and we'll be able to see them and hopefully be able to respond to them as quickly as we can throughout the broadcast. We should be on air for about 25 minutes. So let's get into it, shall we? Let's start with my Australian market wrap. So the market last week. Well, I wish I was able to say to you that it was a remarkable change from the previous weeks, and really there hasn't been. It really is flatlining at the moment. So the way I'm describing it to my clients is that there is a definite U-shape in the pattern of this particular downturn. The question is, how long will be at the bottom of the U? I think the Treasury Secretary Stephen Kennedy implied as much in his statements this week, where Australian businesses should be expecting a U-shaped recovery for this particular downturn. We're also, temp work unusually remains soft as well. Normally in these type of circumstances, we do seem to see more temporary and contract work come through, but we certainly haven't seen that in the white collar space. What was interesting last week was there were a couple of short-term roles in administration that came through, like just 1 or 2 days. Now that is, we haven't seen that for weeks since pre-crisis. It's partly why I'm wearing a tie, by the way, a green tie today, because there are green shoots. And everybody I know is probably thinking, why is he wearing a tie? Because I'm back in the office and I reckon we're back to business. And so hence I thought I'd go a little bit corporate this Friday. There's still also a lot of uncertainty out there. So in regards to those temp roles, what we're finding is our clients are unable to give us a definitive finish date. Or they say, well, we're not sure how long we'll need somebody for. So let's get a commitment of 2 weeks rather than say, or 2 months rather than 6 months. So there's a lot of uncertainty out there in the marketplace. So that's it for the market update. Now let's go to our regular segment on the numbers. And I've got some really interesting numbers to show you. The first one I'd like to show you today is the Internet Vacancy Index. So you can see that on the screen here now. Look, frankly, it's not good reading. What you can see there, and I've shown this to you a month ago when last month's came out, and you can see here that it's a continuing decline. The trend numbers are a decline of 46.1% year on year for the month of April in terms of the number of vacancies that were listed or put up. But if you seasonally adjust that number, it's actually down 61% year on year. So it's quite a big change from last month and from last year. So month on month, by the way, there was still a 42% decline from March to April this year. So we're just seeing what we already know translating into those numbers from the Australian Bureau of Statistics. Now, in the last couple of weeks, we've also had some questions come through asking me to look at the decline in vacancies listed on Seek for a particular industry category. The two categories that were asked for were accounting and also human resources. So I've got those here today. So the categories are actually from Seek, and you can see, and you're probably finding it hard to read, but this is the classification of accounting. The biggest decline is in financial accounting and business services, which I thought was very interesting from a public practice point of view. The least decline, not surprisingly, is in insolvency and corporate recovery, company secretaries, inventory and fixed assets, because obviously supply chain and operations are still there. Treasury is still high at the top. So the next one is human resources, and if we can quickly go to that one, Remy. So here's the human resources. SEEK doesn't have a lot of classification in human resources. The smallest decline is for rem and benefits individuals, those in that sector in human resources, followed then by management within an agency environment. Not surprisingly, and not good news for those recruiters who are watching us today, but recruitment agency in terms of human resources is the biggest decline in the number of advertisements that are out there, followed by generalist HR and consulting. Not too much of a difference there. Internal recruitment is then the third lowest. So generally, what we're seeing is no surprises in those numbers. But if you have a particular sector that you would like me to share those numbers on each week, just drop us a note, put a note in the comments, and I'll pull those numbers up. So the next very interesting bunch of statistics I've got for you this week is on the change in employment by family dynamic. And this is thanks to Indeed and Callum Pickering, the internal economist, or the economist for Indeed here in Australia and New Zealand. I think actually might be Asia Pac. He's pulled together these numbers from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, and it's very interesting. The blue is men, and the orange, I think you'd describe it as women. And this is the change in employment status for these different categories. So partners with children under 15, women by far are bearing the brunt of the loss of work. You can see women in all categories besides partners with dependent children and partners with non-dependent children. And look at the very bottom number, lone parents with non-dependent children. Women are still having a 4% decline in employment, but men have actually increased. So I thought those numbers were quite profound and very interesting. The only thing I would probably draw from that is that in terms of this particular downturn, women are bearing more of the decline than men in the workforce at the moment. So some thanks to Callum and Indeed for those particular numbers. Right. Okay. So now let's move to our spotlight on a particular market. So we're now going to join Megan from our Sydney legal team and Amy from our Melbourne legal team and find out what's going on in those markets. Okay, right. So we'll just wait for Megan and Amy to join us on screen here.
Hello.
Good afternoon, Megan. Hello, Amy.
Hello. Hi, hello.
Hey, right. Well, so Megan Gleeson is from our Sydney legal support team, and Amy Burton is from our Melbourne team. So just the first question for you both, I suppose, is how is the market for legal support at the moment? Shall we start with you, Megan, in Sydney?
Sure. So we are seeing increasing positivity market in Sydney, with a number of new permanent positions being listed with us this week. So a bit of a snapshot of those roles. We're looking for legal secretary within commercial litigation, a number of opportunities for plaintiff insurance litigation secretaries, a legal HR manager, a legal EA, and also an operations manager as well. So on the temporary side, we are predicting that there will be an increase in temporary positions becoming available as many of our clients are starting to return to the office.
Do you think that's played a big part in it, the returning to the office, do you think? I saw an article in the AFR last week on, they actually detailed which firms were going back sooner and which weren't. Do you think that's had an effect on the recruitment sector?
Absolutely. I think, certainly a lot of our clients are talking around the fact that, once we are getting, more people back into the office, that, recruitment will increase as well. Okay,
that's good news. Amy, what about Melbs? Melbs,
yeah, you've already said it. So Melbs, I think many generalist law firms are still doing pretty well. They've remained very busy in this time, and those teams that have possibly quietened down, the support staff in those practice groups have been able to transition and have the opportunity in another area. So I guess it's worked out in that respect, particularly in things like employment and workplace and family. We've we've still got the majority of opportunities on hold, but we have seen recruitment in this time, and we've seen firms virtually onboard staff as well. So great to have kind of those success stories as we go. And even this week, we're seeing a light at the end of the tunnel with a lot of firms saying, look, you know, in the next 4 to 8 weeks, there will be that transition back into the office. It might not be the full workforce, but at least partial. So we'll start to see some recruitment at that time, hopefully.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So, because there is a difference between Sydney and Melbourne in terms of which firms are actually going back sooner. So we're seeing that in the number of vacancies listed as well, which I think is interesting. You touched on this, Amy, but is there any particular areas of law that are performing well, do you think?
So we've had quite a few positions in healthcare, interestingly. So obviously that area is continuing to be busy in this time and will thrive, I'm sure, during the pandemic and after that. In general litigation is always a busy area for us, but seem to be booming in this time. Employment and workplace, as well, as you can imagine, is pretty huge. So still very busy in the litigation areas. I'd say corporate and commercial are probably those areas that have quietened down a bit.
Okay. And Megan, is that your experience in Sydney?
It is quite similar. So our clients are reporting that, you know, a lot of the practice areas are still quite busy. So yes, areas of law such as employment, insurance litigation, both on the plaintiff and defendant side, construction, and also government.
Okay, excellent. And what about surprises? So we've been in this COVID crisis now for the last couple of months. What's been the biggest surprise for you, do you think, Megan?
I've been surprised and just in how well everyone's adapted to the changes that we've been presented. And, you know, we all have different situations that we're in with working from home. And I've been really impressed with all the different sort of coping strategies and ways that people have, you know, adapted to that, and also the technology as well. So I actually wrote a blog recently about my experience working from home with 2 small children. So you might want to check that out.
Okay, excellent. And Amy?
Similar to Megan. So I think when we were told that everyone was going to be working remotely and having to do candidate interviews online and client meetings online, it was, gosh, you know, I could just imagine all the technical issues and everything else going on. And I actually haven't suffered at all. There's obviously the odd glitch here and there, but everyone's pretty tech savvy. So very greatly surprised by that. I think I have definitely laughed a lot at the different hobbies and different things that are keeping everyone sane in this time. People fishing, people knitting. I feel like we've all aged about 30, 40 years in the last 2 months, but some really nice, wholesome activities that we've all been getting stuck into. Nice to hear about as well.
Yeah, for me, it's and we did this Snap survey recently, which if you're watching and you participated, those results you should get a call from your consultant this week sometime to arrange for us to present the results to you. But one of those statistics was 64% of companies who had hired during the last 2 months had onboarded people virtually. So to make that adjustment, I would never have thought that number would have been that. So it's very interesting. Great. Let's see if there are any questions that have come through. And if you do have any questions for Amy and Megan, then please write them now. I do have one from Tammy here, and you may have answered this, but when will legal firms start wanting support staff again, given restrictions are starting to ease? So I suppose we've touched on that, but Megan and Amy, what do you think?
I'm happy to give my 2 cents on it. So I believe that the conversations are already happening in terms of strategy with recruitment. So with firms not necessarily quietening down in this time and remaining busy, there has been some hesitation to onboard in some respects. So with the view of, you know, having a date when there's going to be part of the workforce going back into the office, those kind of conversations will start now or in the coming weeks. So law firms know to get the best talent, they need to start interviewing as soon as possible. So hopefully we'll look at more recruitment over the next 4 or so weeks with the view that people can actually onboard in the office from maybe like July time, is my thought. Yeah.
Megan, any further comments?
I definitely agree with Amy on that point. Look, as we said, certainly, with Sydney, the positive signs are already starting there. And I do predict that, once firms, are getting back into the office, that there will be that increase in temporary cover as well.
Okay, good. And another question here, how can we get in touch with either of you if somebody's interested in legal support in both cities?
Yep, so you can reach out to us either through our website or all of the connections, so you can connect with us on LinkedIn, email, or give us a call.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and it's simply Megan at People to People and Amy at People to People, isn't that right?
That's
right.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are all over social, I know that. So.
We certainly are.
Yeah, thanks again for joining us today, and if there are any other questions, we'll let you know. So now let's move through to our job of the week and Ben Wheeler, or opportunity of the week, and Ben Wheeler from our Brisbane office. G'day, Ben.
Hi, Mark. G'day, how are you?
Apparently you've got a finance business partner role that you want to talk to us about. And
I do indeed. No. I think you might be one of the few people.
That's very Queensland of you, isn't it?
Yes. No, I think it's a little bit more relaxed, and a dress code, as I was telling you earlier, apparently it does still apply, even if you're working from home. So, maybe not to the tie just yet, though. Yeah. So the finance business partner role that we've got is based in Brisbane CBD. It's an interim role, so it's only for around 4 months. There will be a permanent role recruited at some stage, which of course you will be encouraged to apply for, as you'll be essentially acting in that role. It's a global organisation that operates in the mining sector. What the role actually entails is budgeting, forecasting, financial modelling and analysis. So you've got to have very strong Excel skills with this role. But what really is key is, the title sort of gives that away, is the business partnering element. So we're looking for people that have experience with working with operations and can be that conduit between finance and the operation side. There is very minimal travel, so it's not a mining site-based role per se, or having to go there on a regular basis, but there'll be lots and lots of communication coming through. What we're looking for is a qualified accountant, CA or CPA, someone with those strong Excel skills, and of course the very strong business partnering skills. So you've worked in an environment where you've sort of proven your knowledge and your ability to do that. If you'd like to find out more, of course you can contact us, as we've just mentioned. I think you do actually via Facebook or via our website, or you can always pick up the phone on 07 3118 0125 as well.
Excellent. Yes. And yeah, you can definitely, on Facebook, there's career opportunities just to the left. You can actually click in there and do a search and find this particular role and apply for it there. A reminder also for everybody that if you visit our website, that you can, at the top right-hand corner, you can go up and there says timesheets, but there's also a login there. That's where you can register, and you can register for job alerts so that you don't miss out on any of these new opportunities that come through. I don't think you mentioned the salary there, Ben. What was the salary?
So it's on an hourly rate basis. So we're looking between 60 and 70 plus super.
Okay, great. Perfect. Fantastic. So I can't see any questions come through. We'll just give everybody a moment if there's any questions for Ben about this particular opportunity. If not, then, Pavinda says hi. Well, hello, Pavinda. So if you're interested in this role, then please apply for that. Okay, excellent. All right, thanks, Ben. Thanks for joining us today. And now let's go to Kath Kennedy from our Sydney office, or Parramatta office, actually. Or I think you're coming live from the Blue Mountains. From the Blue Mountains. With your
as far
job,
west as you can go.
With the job, apparently it was snowing there this morning, wasn't it?
It wasn't snowing here, but it was freezing. So I'm not surprised if it was snowing a bit further up the mountain.
Okay, good. And you've got a job hunting tip on resume preparation.
Yeah, look, I thought I'd just talk through a couple of tips around how to prepare your resume. I think there might be some people at the moment that are finding themselves looking for work for potentially the first time in a long time. So just a couple of ideas for you to consider when you're putting your CV together. So the first is really to present your experience concisely, clearly, in a really easy to read format. So the person who's looking at your application may have looked at many, many, many applications before yours on that day. So please make it easy for them to just digest that information. So your fonts should be professional, good spacing, just well laid out. So really consider your formatting. The other thing to really pay attention to is to make sure that your CV reflects the role that you're applying for. And sometimes a bit of a test can be to get somebody who doesn't know your market, doesn't know what you do really, to have a look at the job you're applying for and have a look at the CV that you've presented, and it should be pretty clear that there's a match there. So yeah, make sure if it's a payroll manager requiring a particular system, it says really clearly you're a payroll manager and that you've got that system. Please, while I'm saying systems there, it's really important to put all of the relevant system skills into your CV. Often, particularly recruiters, potentially recruitment teams in large corporates as well, will use keyword searches to look for particular skills within your CV. So don't sort of think, oh, I could talk about that at interview, or if I had a chance for a phone screen, I can tell them all the things that I've done in terms of systems. Have it there so that you come up in search. That's really, really important. Obviously, your education needs to be included as well. And I would encourage you, if you've done some tertiary education, even if you think maybe it's not so relevant, perhaps you studied something and now you're in a different career, still include it, because it shows your commitment to seeing something through. It shows that you've developed those research skills, so it's still important to include that. And I think there's understanding some people about how to structure your CV, and my advice is to put it in a reverse chronological order. So you would put the role that you do at the moment or your most recent position, and then work back from there, probably about 10 years or so, or 3 or 4 roles, but you need to use your judgment. You certainly don't need to go back to, the paper run when you were a boy, but you just put sort of the most relevant experience over the last decade or so. And the most important thing is to make sure that you use the opportunity to sell yourself. So obviously you have your responsibilities, and that really just talks about sort of the function of the job that you did. But what's really important is what you actually achieved within that position. So, and that will have the most impact if you back it up with some data. So it will vary depending on the job that you do, but you save the business money. If so, how much money? Did you win a new account? If so, what did that mean in terms of the sales results? So some data to give evidence to your experience and achievements will really put you in a good position.
Excellent. All right. I did actually
There is
a...
There's a blog and there's a video done by Sally Horwood only recently that you'll find on our website, and I'm sure we can put a link to the to those in the comments as well.
Great. I was just going to say, I did deliver the Port Macquarie News when I was a young man around the suburbs of Port Macquarie. So there you go. We've got a couple of questions here. The first one is, I'm a graphic designer. Do I need to make my CV look great, or should I stick to a normal format? Because I know portfolio.
Yeah. Yes, and I completely appreciate it's really important for graphic designers to be able to showcase and present their skills. The advice that I would give is to have a CV that's relatively sort of consistent with a standard format. So that might just be a Word document or a PDF potentially. And then you would include a link to your portfolio. So that would be where the person reviewing your CV can go and have a look at obviously the quality of your work, but particularly if it's coming into a recruiter through some sort of application management system, really big files, whole heap of graphic, often they just get all muddled or they just don't get through. So include a link is probably the best thing.
Yeah, with parsing technology, artificial intelligence, and all that sort of thing, a text-based CV, although it's counterintuitive for graphic design, I think works as the first step for sure. Jaden also says here, what's better when explaining your experience, dot points or paragraphs?
That's a good question. Definitely paragraphs. Definitely bullet points, I should say. Paragraphs are very. How long have I worked with you? Paragraphs are really hard to digest. They're just, it's busy. It's just too hard to take in. So, to my first point about being concise and succinct and really explaining things really clearly, you want bullet points that you can elaborate on, and of course you're going to elaborate on when you get the opportunity to speak to somebody.
Yeah, fabulous. Fantastic. All right. I can't see any other questions here. So thank you very much, Catherine Kennedy, all the way from the very chilly Blue Mountains this afternoon. Right. So that brings us pretty much to the end of the broadcast here today. A couple of things. Firstly is the upcoming events that we've got. and that is next Wednesday, Thursday the 28th. We have a webinar that we have with a special guest, Jane Davis, and she's presenting Positive Change Leadership, a 4-step model for today's leader. We'll make sure we put the link to that in the comments below. Don't miss out on that one. I'm particularly looking forward to that one myself. Now, the poll results. Each week we have poll results. Last week I changed. I know I mentioned a particular poll I was going to run and then mentioned this week. We'll get the results for that one next week. There was one that was particularly of interest for this week, which was part of our SNAP survey that we did in the last couple of weeks, where we polled 300 job seekers out there. And one of the interesting stats that came from that was that 38% of them admit that their job search decision-making has been affected by the COVID crisis. And I think this is one of the biggest things about this downturn. This is the third one I've lived through, is this idea of candidate hesitancy, the fact that there is an issue on both the demand side, so the demand for labour has gone down, but also on the supply side that potential employees and talent are hesitant to make change or to take a different role, etc., based on these health or uncertainty which exists in the market generally, which includes health-related worries as well. Very interesting result there. So 40% of potential candidates are worried about that. Thank you again for joining us for this afternoon. Somebody's written a comment here about buying a particular product. Thanks for your comment. I won't mention it though. Thanks everybody, and thank you to Ben. Thank you to Amy. Thank you to Megan and Catherine for joining us this afternoon from around the country. Hopefully we'll see everybody again 12:30 next Friday for the People to People live market update. Thanks everybody.